The word game changer is a favorite in the marketing division of many companies. But the reality is that true game changers don't come along very often. The original BMW S1000RR from 2010, that was a game changer. In fact, the bike was so competent that it carried on for 8 years with just a few evolutionary changes along the way. This 2019 S1000RR is a brand new model. It's the next generation. And BMW tells us that almost everything, right down to the nuts and bolts, is new on this motorcycle. Now, going by the reputation of the old S1000RR, I think we're in for one hell of a day today.
Brand new means brand new, and the S1000RR gets a fresh set of clothes that gives it a completely different look, one that's leaner and sleeker. That being said, it's not quite as identifiable as it used to be, especially from the front end. The side profile is more reminiscent of the old bike with a similar set of gills in the fairing, while the new bronze-colored trellis subframe is an eye-catcher. But it's the rear that I'm most intrigued by, and if you're wondering why it looks a bit strange, that's because there's no brake lamp here, or at least not a traditional one. Instead, BMW has cleverly packaged the brake lamp into the indicators, and both of them light up red when the brake is applied. This means that by undoing just 2 screws and 1 connector, you could remove the entire assembly at the racetrack, resulting in a clean race bike look. Moving over to the cockpit, facing the rider is a new 6.5-inch TFT display that looks similar to the ones on the new Gen GS ADVs. This one, however, is more sophisticated and it offers up to 4 different display modes. You control it via BMW's rotary scroller on the left handlebar, which sounds like a cool feature, but in reality it is quite fiddly to use. BMWs tend to offer high levels of finish on their bikes, and this one is no less. It's the small things like the beautifully finished foot peg holders or the lovely adjustable levers that make it stand out as a very premium machine.
You know, to sum up the styling of this bike, I think it looks a lot more Japanese than it used to. And the symmetric headlight, well, it just feels a little out of place. And that's funny because when BMW did the asymmetric headlight, we all made a hue and cry. And now they've gone back to symmetric headlights and we're not a happy bunch. Well, what do you say about that?
Overall, this is a clean and well executed design, but to me that's not the standout point of this motorcycle. What really makes it special is the way it rides. Let's begin with a brand new frame that BMW calls the Flex frame. This is essentially a traditional beam frame but with completely different mounting points for the engine that is now more closely involved as a load-bearing unit. The new frame weighs 1.3 kilos less than the previous unit, and you'll also notice a brand new swing arm that uses an upside-down design with bracing at the bottom, something commonly seen in WSPK and MotoGP. This brings packaging advantages for the rear shock, and it also allows for improved swing arm flex characteristics that aim to generate better rear grip under hard acceleration. With this iteration, BMW has lengthened the wheelbase by a bit, but also sharpened the front steering geometry. The overall effect is supposedly more straight-line stability along with improved agility. Agility also gets a big boost from the new carbon fiber wheels, which are standard on the range-topping M Sport model we got to ride. These lightweight wheels reduce unsprung mass dramatically, and they also help the M Sport model save a further 4.5 kilos over the standard bike, which at 197 kgs is a full 11 kilos lighter than the old model. The mid-level S1000RR Pro and the top-spec M Sport model both get electronically damped suspension, while the M Sport also brings the carbon wheels, a lightweight lithium-ion battery, slightly thicker front disc brakes, and a very firm M Sport seat, which will probably be a pain on the street.
With the old S1000RR, perhaps the biggest game-changing part of that motorcycle was the engine. It made so much power, it just blew its rivals out of the water. This one is different. This is not the most powerful motorcycle in its segment, and I'm not even sure if it's the fastest.
We had a rather brief taste of the S1000RR at the BIC, but it only takes a few seconds of hanging on with the throttle wide open down the back straight to know that this is a blindingly fast machine. I found myself hauling on the brakes at nearly 295 kph on more than one occasion, which makes this one of the hardest charging liter bikes out there. But I say liter bike because the Ducati Panigale V4 feels faster still, crossing 300 km/h with relative ease down the BIC straight. But then again, the Panigale cheats with an extra 100cc, so it isn't really a liter bike at all. Assisting the BMW's mental top-end performance is a new variable camshaft control technology called Shift Cam. This allows for a much meatier mid-range without sacrificing on a raging top end. A bidirectional quick shifter is standard on the mid and top spec variants, and thankfully it works much nicer than the clunky quick shifter that you will find on the big GS ADVs. The engine may be brand new, but just like before, this isn't a silky smooth screamer like your typical Japanese inline 4, and there's a mild but noticeable vibration to be felt in the bars and foot pegs. Ignore the buzz and you'll find that the throttle is very smooth, which is a blessing when it comes to dialing in that crazy power on corner exits.
One of the big contributors to the ease and accessibility of riding this motorcycle is how compact it feels. Now, BMW's put a lot of work towards making that happen. The new engine is slimmer and so is the frame that goes around it. But it doesn't just stop there. The bars are now wider, which gives you better leverage. And even though the riding position is compact, it's not cramped. And a tall person like me has plenty of room to move around.
At a wide and super smooth track like the BIC, the S1000RR feels like a precision instrument that instantly sets out to help you cut down your lap times. The carbon fiber wheels result in super quick initial turn-in, and it's almost alarming the first few times you experience it, but then you grow to like the deliciously immediate responses. I did find that the bike moved around a bit on its suspension through the midpoint of the turning process, but once it was fully leaned over, it felt nice and stable again with plenty of confidence from the super sticky Metzeler Racetech K3 tires. This could be down to the suspension setup and the race mode that we were riding in, and some time spent to set up the bike could sort this out.
One of the things about this motorcycle that's really impressed me is the electronics package and just how vast it is. You have multiple riding modes depending on which model you buy, and they're very tunable. In fact, you'd need to spend days or even weeks riding the motorcycle to fully understand the systems and set them up to your liking.
Going beyond the electronic suspension adjustability, there's also multi-stage adjustability for the traction control, ABS, wheelie control, engine brake control, and this is in addition to a dynamic brake control system that introduces a slight amount of rear brake support when the rider uses the front brake. Further toys come in the form of a pit lane speed limiter and a lean angle display on the dashboard. If you buy the mid or top models, you'll also get 3 additional Race Pro riding modes on top of the standard, road, rain, dynamic and race modes. These Pro modes can be freely set up at the rider's preference using all the above parameters. BMW has even thrown in a special rocker style button on the left bar that lets the rider quickly adjust traction control settings while on the move, although this only works in the Race Pro modes. The new S1000RR is certainly a racier machine than it used to be, but it hasn't given up on the old bike's creature comforts. This is still the only liter bike to offer luxuries like heated grips and cruise control, but it now ups the ante with GPS navigation, Bluetooth connectivity, tire pressure monitoring, and there's even a hill start assist system. Now, it's great having these toys for the road, but none of them matter on the racetrack. We only had a handful of laps where we had to follow a BMW lead rider, and while the pace was quick, it wasn't flat out. Under these conditions, I liked how the new Haze brakes worked along with a clever ABS system, but we never really got to brake hard lap after lap, so I can't comment on the tendency for mild brake fade as reported internationally. The electronics do a superb job of making what should be a monster a relatively safe and friendly machine to push. But just like before, this bike isn't a highly emotional machine, and it trades things like soul and character in exchange for clinical precision in the quest of blistering lap times. Now before we end, we should celebrate the pricing that BMW has achieved. Starting at Rs 18.5 lakh for the base model and going up to 22.95 lakh for the top M Sport, the S1000RR is not only more affordable than the Ducati Panigale V4, but it also costs less than a couple of Japanese rivals as well.
I am really impressed with this motorcycle. It has so many strong points in isolation, but they come together to make it a devastatingly fast but fairly easy and accessible motorcycle to ride. The price, however, is the icing on the top. This thing is great value for money, and if you're looking for a fast liter class rocket for the racetrack, you cannot ignore this motorcycle and you have to go take a test ride.